I was still adjusting the damn sensitivity knob when the platform lurched sideways. Not enough to knock me over, but enough to make my stomach drop. You never really get used to that feeling, the way our research station rides the swells of Gliese 581G's ocean. 1 minute you're on solid footing, the next you're scrambling to grab onto something. "Come on," I muttered, steadying myself against the monitoring station's frame. The equipment was giving me trouble again, third time this week. These sensors weren't designed for constant exposure to salt spray and humidity, no matter what the manufacturer specs claimed. The ocean stretched out in every direction, endless and dark. We'd been here almost 6 months now, and that vastness still got to me sometimes. No land, no horizon line breaking up all that water, just our research platform and nothing else for thousands of miles. I tightened the housing on the wave motion sensor and checked the readings again. The numbers were still off, way off. According to this, we were experiencing wave amplitudes nearly double what they should be, which didn't match what I was seeing with my eyes. "Piece of junk," I said, giving the casing a gentle tap with my knuckle. Sometimes that worked. Not this time. The morning air felt heavier than usual. Thicker, somehow. I wiped sweat from my forehead and glanced at my watch. 7:43. The briefing started at 8, which meant I had exactly 17 minutes to get this equipment functioning or explain to Zoe why our data had a 6-hour gap. I tried recalibrating the whole system, which meant unhooking the main sensor array and running the startup sequence again. The ocean didn't make it easy. Another swell lifted the platform, and I had to grab the railing with my free hand to keep from losing my balance. That's when I noticed it. The water looked different today. Darker, more agitated. I'd been monitoring these waters for months, learning their patterns, the way they moved and changed with the weather systems. This was something else. The surface seemed to ripple in ways that didn't match the wind direction. Maybe the sensor wasn't broken after all. I finished reconnecting the array and checked the readings again, still showing those abnormal wave patterns. I made a note in the log and took a few photos with my phone. Zoe would want documentation. The intercom crackled to life overhead. "Morning briefing in 10 minutes. All research leads to the main conference room." Zoe's voice, clipped and professional as always. I gathered my tablet and the printouts of yesterday's data and headed inside. The corridor leading to the conference room was cramped and utilitarian, like everything else on the platform. No wasted space when every square foot costs a fortune to build and maintain. The air conditioning hit me as soon as I stepped through the door. The contrast between the humid outside air and the dry, cool interior always gave me a momentary chill. I nodded to Wendy as I passed her workstation. She was hunched over her climate models, completely absorbed. Typical Wendy, probably been there since dawn. The conference room was already half full when I arrived. Finn was arguing with Holly about something related to their algae samples, while Doris scrolled through something on her tablet. I took my usual seat near the middle of the table and set up my materials. Zoe walked in exactly at 8, datapad in hand. She never started late, not once in the 6 months we'd been stationed here. "Good morning, everyone," she said, taking her place at the head of the table. No small talk, straight to business. "Let's start with the oceanographic data. Matt, what are your current readings?" I cleared my throat. "There's something unusual in the wave patterns this morning. The sensors are showing amplitudes nearly twice normal levels, despite relatively calm surface conditions." Zoe frowned. "Equipment malfunction?" That was my first thought, but after recalibration, the readings persist, and I hesitated, not wanting to sound like I was jumping to conclusions. "The water looks different today, darker. The surface movement seems inconsistent with current wind patterns." "Different how, exactly?" Brody asked from across the table. He always needed precise definitions. "It's subtle," I admitted. "But there's a restlessness to it. The wave formations aren't matching our predictive models." Zoe nodded, making a note. "Wendy, any changes in weather patterns that might explain this?" Wendy shook her head. "Atmospheric pressure is stable. Wind speeds consistent with yesterday's measurements. Nothing in my data explains abnormal wave action. Could be seismic, Grace suggested. We've recorded minor tremors before. The seismographs haven't registered anything significant, Braden said. I checked this morning's readings before coming here. We continued through the rest of the briefing, each team lead reporting their findings. Zoe pulled up the holographic display showing the ocean current mapping we'd been working on for the past 3 months. The data visualization hovered above the center of the table, layers of blue and green showing the complex patterns of Gliese 508G's global ocean currents. We're making good progress, Zoe said, highlighting a section where our mapping was most complete. But we still have significant gaps here and here. She pointed to the darker areas of the display. The southern current is proving more variable than our initial models suggested. I studied the display, noting how the current patterns seemed to spiral in ways that defied our Earth-based oceanographic expectations. This planet's ocean behaved differently. The combination of its density, the planet's rotation speed, and the absence of large land masses created circulation patterns unlike anything in our solar system. Matt, I want you to focus on extending our mapping in this region, Zoe continued, highlighting an area to the southwest of our position. Based on yesterday's satellite pass, there may be a significant countercurrent developing. I'll need to recalibrate the deep water sensors, I said. But I can get on that this afternoon. The rest of the briefing went quickly. Research updates, equipment maintenance schedules, supply inventory, the usual. My mind kept drifting back to those wave readings and the strange look of the water. Something wasn't adding up. When Zoe dismissed us, I gathered my materials and headed for the door. I needed to check those sensors again, maybe deploy one of the submersible drones to get a better look at what was happening below the surface. That's when Michiel grabbed my arm. I hadn't even noticed him during the briefing, which was strange because Michiel was usually vocal about his marine biology findings. But now he was right beside me, his fingers digging into my bicep with surprising strength. Matt, I need to talk to you. His voice was low, urgent. I turned to look at him and felt a jolt of concern. Michael looked terrible. His face was pale, almost gray, with dark circles under his eyes. His hair, usually neatly combed, stuck out at odd angles like he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. Michiel, you okay? I asked, stepping aside to let others pass through the doorway. He glanced around the room, then back at me. Not here, outside. Something in his expression made me nod. All right, let's go. We walked in silence, back through the corridor and out onto the observation deck. The wind had picked up, and the platform swayed more noticeably now. Michiel led me to the far corner, away from the handful of researchers taking air breaks. I saw something. His words came out in a rush. During my dive this morning, something big. I frowned. What do you mean big? Like a new species of fish? He shook his head violently. No, not fish. Not like anything we've cataloged. This was massive, Matt. Massive. His hands gestured wildly, trying to indicate size. I studied his face. Michael was our lead marine biologist, with 15 years of field experience before joining this expedition. He wasn't prone to exaggeration or flights of fancy, but right now, he looked unhinged, his eyes too wide, movements jerky and uncoordinated. When was this dive? I didn't see it on the schedule. 5:30. I went out early. Couldn't sleep. His words tumbled out faster. Couldn't sleep. His words tumbled out faster now. I've been noticing anomalies in the plankton distribution. Wanted to check it myself without waiting for the team. That wasn't protocol, but Michael had been acting increasingly independent lately, taking solo dives, working odd hours. Zoe had mentioned it in the last staff meeting. All right, so what exactly did you see? I kept my voice calm, steady. The way he was shaking worried me. It moved beneath me. Michiel's eyes darted to the water, then back to my face. At first I thought it was a shadow, the way the light plays tricks down there, you know. But then, he swallowed hard. Then it turned, changed direction. It was following me, Matt. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the wind. Following you? Are you sure? Yes. The word came out as a hiss. When I changed course, it changed course. When I stopped, it stopped. It was tracking me. His fingers dug into my arm again. The size of it had to be at least 30 meters, maybe more. I tried to process this. The largest organism we documented on Gliesa 581G was a type of eel-like creature barely 2 meters long. Nothing in our surveys had even hinted at megafauna. Did you get any footage? I asked. Standard procedure for all dives was continuous recording. Something flickered across Michiel's face. Frustration, maybe fear. Camera malfunctioned. The whole system went dead when it got close. That was convenient. Too convenient. But the terror in his eyes seemed genuine. What did it look like? Shape, features, anything distinctive? Dark. So dark it was almost black. His breathing quickened. Long. Serpentine maybe, but thicker in the middle. And fast, Matt. The way it moved, nothing that big should move that fast. I nodded slowly, trying to appear receptive while my mind sorted through the possibilities. Equipment malfunction causing hallucinations, nitrogen narcosis, or simply the human brain trying to make sense of unfamiliar shapes in an alien environment. I need to report this, he said suddenly. Everyone needs to know. We should suspend all water activities until we understand what we're dealing with. That would effectively halt our entire research mission. Let's take a step back, I suggested. First, you should get checked out in medical. Deep dives can... I'm not suffering from nitrogen narcosis, he snapped, pulling away from me. I know what I saw, Matt. It was watching me, studying me. His voice dropped to a whisper. It was intelligent. Now I was really concerned. Michael was trembling visibly, his skin clammy despite the humidity. I believe you saw something, I said carefully. But before we alarm everyone, let's get more information. Maybe I could take a drone down to the same area. No. The force of his response startled me. No drones. It doesn't like our technology. The camera died. My comm system failed. Even the lights flickered when it got close. That caught my attention. If there was something out there interfering with electronic equipment, that was a serious concern, regardless of its size or shape. All right. No drones for now, I conceded. But we need to tell Zoe about this, and Caitlin should check you out. Make sure you're not experiencing any after effects from the dive. He nodded jerkily, some of the wild energy seeming to drain out of him. Yes, Zoe. We need to tell her. I guided him back inside, keeping a steadying hand on his shoulder. The man was in rough shape, pale and shaking, his usual scientific precision replaced by this frantic, disjointed account. We found Zoe in the control room, reviewing satellite data with Grace. She looked up as we entered, her expression shifting from annoyance at the interruption to concern when she saw Michael's state. What's happened? She asked, straightening up. Michel had an encounter during an early morning dive, I explained, choosing my words carefully. He saw something unusual. Unusual how? Her gaze sharpened. Michel stepped forward. A creature, massive, at least 30 meters. It followed me, tracked me. The words spilled out in the same rushed, fragmented way he'd spoken to me. Zoe's eyes narrowed slightly. You went diving alone before scheduled hours. That's not important, Michael insisted. What matters is what's out there. We need to suspend all water activities immediately. Grace had stopped working and was watching the exchange with undisguised interest. Zoe gestured toward the door. Let's continue this in my office. The four of us moved to Zoe's office, a slightly larger version of our standard quarters, with the addition of a small conference table. Zoe closed the door behind us. Start from the beginning, she said, taking a seat. Time, location, depth. Mikhail recounted his story again, more details emerging but the core remaining the same. A massive, dark shape that followed him, equipment failures when it approached, the sense of being observed by something intelligent. As he spoke, I watched Zoe's face. She was good at maintaining a neutral expression, but I caught the small tells, the slight tightening around her eyes, the way she tapped her index finger against her thumb. She wasn't buying it, at least not entirely. "And you have no footage, no sensor readings, nothing to verify this encounter?" she asked when he finished. "I told you, everything malfunctioned," Mikhail insisted. His voice had taken on a defensive edge. "That's part of what makes this significant. It affected the equipment somehow." Zoe nodded thoughtfully. "We should have Caitlin take a look at you. Standard procedure after any unusual dive." "I don't need a psychological evaluation," Michael said sharply. "I need people to take this seriously." "We are taking it seriously," I interjected, trying to diffuse the tension. "But we need more information before making operational decisions." Zoe stood up. "I'm calling Caitlin in. In the meantime, no mention of this to the rest of the team. I don't want to create unnecessary concern." "People have a right to know what's out there," Michael insisted. "Once we verify what's out there, they will," Zoe countered. Her tone left no room for argument. 15 minutes later, Caitlin arrived. Our mission psychologist was calm and professional as always, her auburn hair pulled back in its usual practical style. She listened to Michael's account without interruption, her green eyes watchful and analytical. "How have you been sleeping lately, Michael?" she asked when he finished. His jaw tightened. "This isn't about my sleep patterns, it's about what I saw." "I understand," she said gently, "but context matters. Fatigue, stress, they can affect perception, especially in challenging environments like deep water dives. Are you saying I hallucinated a 30-meter creature?" The edge in his voice was sharper now. "I'm not saying that at all," Caitlin replied evenly. "But you mentioned you went diving because you couldn't sleep. That suggests you might be experiencing some sleep disruption, which can impact cognitive processing." I watched Michael's frustration grow, his hands clenched and unclenched on the table. "It was real," he insisted. "Check my equipment if you don't believe me. Something caused those malfunctions." "We will," Zoe assured him. "Technical will examine everything. In the meantime, I want you to take today off. Rest. Let Caitlin do a standard post-incident evaluation. While something potentially dangerous is out there?" Michael stood abruptly. "This is unbelievable. 6 months of cataloging every microscopic organism in this ocean, and when I finally discover something significant, you all act like I'm losing my mind." The room fell silent. I felt caught in the middle. Michael was clearly distressed, but his story had holes big enough to pilot a submersible through. "No one is dismissing your experience," Caitlin said after a moment. "But standard protocol exists for a reason. We need to rule out all possibilities." "Including the possibility that I'm crazy?" Michael laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "Fine. Run your tests. Check my equipment. But when someone else encounters this thing and doesn't come back, remember this conversation." With that, he stormed out, leaving an uncomfortable silence behind him. Zoe sighed. "Thoughts?" Caitlin considered for a moment. "He believes what he's saying. The fear response is genuine, but that doesn't necessarily mean what he saw is what he thinks he saw." "Stress-induced hallucination?" I suggested. "Possibly. He's been showing signs of increased anxiety over the past few weeks, isolating himself, working odd hours." Caitlin tapped her fingers thoughtfully on the table. "The ocean environment here is alien enough to trigger pareidolia under the right conditions, the brain trying to create recognizable patterns from unfamiliar stimuli." "And the equipment failures?" Zoe asked. I shrugged. "Could be coincidental. We've had issues with the dive gear before, Salt water and electronics don't mix well, no matter how well sealed they're supposed to be. Zoe nodded. Matt, can you check his equipment? See if there's any unusual damage or malfunction that might corroborate his story. I can do that. And I'll talk to the rest of the team, Caitlin said. Discreetly. See if anyone else has noticed him acting unusually. We dispersed after that, each with our assigned tasks. But as I walked back to my station, I couldn't shake a nagging feeling. Mikhail was one of our most experienced researchers, not prone to flights of fancy or exaggeration. What if he had seen something? I spent the afternoon examining his dive equipment. The camera system had indeed malfunctioned, a complete power failure that the diagnostics couldn't explain. The communication unit showed similar issues, but both could be attributed to water damage, though I couldn't find any obvious breach in the seals. By evening, word had spread despite our efforts to keep things quiet. Research stations are worse than small towns for gossip. I overheard snippets in the mess hall, theories ranging from pressure-induced hallucinations to secret government experiments. Michael sat alone, picking at his food, clearly aware of the whispered conversations around him. I watched him from across the room, noting how isolated he looked, how frustrated. Part of me wanted to join him, offer some solidarity, but another part hesitated. There was something in his manner that unsettled me, an intensity that went beyond professional curiosity or even reasonable fear. What if there was truth to his story? The ocean of Gliese 581G was still largely unexplored. We'd only been here 6 months, barely scratched the surface of what might live in its depths. Earth's oceans had surprised us countless times. Creatures thought extinct found living in remote trenches, behaviors never before documented suddenly observed. Why should this alien ocean be any different? After dinner, I made a decision. Instead of heading back to my quarters, I detoured to the equipment bay and signed out a portable sonar scanner. Not as powerful as the main array, but enough to detect large objects underwater. If there was something out there, something big enough to match Michael's description, this would find it. I needed to see for myself. The night air felt damp against my face as I made my way to the platform's edge. The portable sonar scanner felt heavier than it looked, but I managed to set it up without too much trouble. I'd used these things before, just not on this planet, not on this ocean. I positioned it on the railing, making sure the sensor was fully submerged in the water. The small screen flickered to life with a soft blue glow, the only real light out here besides the dim safety markers along the platform's perimeter. Everyone else was inside, either sleeping or working the night shift. Just me out here, hunting for monsters. I felt kind of stupid, if I'm being honest. Here I was, a grown man with a PhD, standing alone in the dark, scanning for sea creatures because my colleague got spooked. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Michael wasn't just making this up. I'd known him for years. He wasn't the type to panic or exaggerate, and something about the look in his eyes when he'd described that thing. The scanner beeped as it initialized, running through its standard calibration sequence. The screen showed normal patterns at first, small clusters that represented schools of fish, the occasional larger blip that was probably one of the seal-like creatures we'd documented in our first month here. Nothing unusual. I adjusted the depth range, pushing it deeper. The signal got weaker the farther down it went, but the equipment was good enough to give me readings several hundred meters below the surface. Still nothing out of the ordinary, just the expected marine life we'd already cataloged. "Come on," I muttered, tapping at the screen. "Show me something." I widened the scan radius and tweaked the sensitivity. Maybe Mitchell had been seeing things. Stress can do that to you. We'd all been out here for months, isolated on this platform in the middle of an alien ocean. It wouldn't be the first time someone's mind played tricks on them. The scanner beeped again, a different tone this time. I frowned, leaning in closer to check the readings. Something had just entered the scan radius, something big. I adjusted the settings again, trying to get a clearer image. My breath caught as the outline became more defined on the screen. This wasn't a school of fish or one of the seal creatures. This was something massive, a cylindrical object moving slowly about 200 meters below. I quickly calculated the dimensions based on the scale. It had to be at least 50 meters long, maybe more. "Holy shit," I whispered. The object was moving in a deliberate pattern, not drifting with the currents. It was ascending too, slowly making its way toward the surface, toward us. I needed to tell someone. This wasn't something I should keep to myself. I grabbed my radio from my belt. "Zoe, you there? It's Matt." Static crackled for a moment before her voice came through, clear and alert despite the hour. "Go ahead, Matt. I'm on the south platform. I need you to come see something. Bring Wendy if she's still up." What am I looking at? She didn't waste time with questions about why I was out there with a scanner in the middle of the night. I think Michael was telling the truth. There was a pause. "I'll be right there." I kept my eyes glued to the scanner, watching as the object continued its slow ascent. It was around 180 meters now, moving steadily upward. Footsteps sounded behind me, and I turned to see Zoe approaching, Wendy right behind her. They both looked wide awake despite the hour. "What do you have?" Zoe asked, coming to stand beside me. I pointed at the screen. "That's what I have, cylindrical object, approximately 50 meters long, currently at 175 meters depth and rising." Wendy leaned in, her eyes widening. That's massive. "And it's exactly what Michael described," I added. "The size, the shape, everything." Zoe frowned, studying the readings. "How fast is it moving?" "About 3 meters per minute. It's deliberate, not drifting. And look at this." I tapped a control, changing the display mode. The density readings suggest it's biological, not mechanical. It's alive. Wendy pulled out her tablet and started taking notes. "We need to get underwater cameras ready. If this thing surfaces, we need visual confirmation." "I'll call the others," Zoe said, reaching for her radio. "Brody should see this, and Grace." Within minutes, the platform had gone from quiet night mode to bustling activity. Word spread fast, and soon almost the entire research team had gathered around my station, watching the sonar readings with a mixture of fascination and apprehension. Brody stood with his arms crossed, frowning at the screen. "We should maintain distance, if this is what attacked Michael." "We don't know that it attacked him," Wendy cut in. "His equipment malfunctioned. That's all we know for sure." "His equipment malfunctioned when that thing got close to him," Brody countered. "That can't be a coincidence." I kept my eyes on the scanner. The object was at 120 now, still ascending steadily. "It'll be within visual range soon if it keeps coming up." "Where's Michel?" someone asked from behind me. I realized I hadn't seen him since our conversation earlier. "Caitlin has him under observation," Zoe replied. "He's resting." "He should be here," I said. "He saw this thing. He deserves to know he wasn't hallucinating." Zoe shook her head. "Caitlin advised against it. His state is still fragile." I wanted to argue, but decided against it. Zoe was right. Michael needed rest more than vindication right now. We could tell him in the morning when he was more stable. 100 meters, I announced, watching the screen. "It's slowing down." Everyone leaned forward, eyes fixed on the scanner. The massive shape was clearly visible now, its movements more defined. It seemed to be circling directly below us, no longer ascending, but maintaining depth. "What's it doing?" Wendy asked, voicing what we were all thinking. "I don't know," I admitted. "It's just waiting." And then, without warning, the sonar signal vanished. The screen showed nothing but the usual scattered readings of smaller marine life. "What happened?" Zoe demanded. I frantically adjusted the settings, widening the scan radius, increasing the sensitivity. "I don't know. It's gone." "That's impossible," Brody said. "Something that size can't just disappear." But it had. 1 second it was there, a massive presence hovering 100 meters below us, and the next, it was gone. I kept scanning, sweeping the sonar in wider and wider arcs, but there was nothing. Could it have moved out of range that quickly? Wendy asked. I shook my head. Not unless it can move at speeds we've never observed in any marine life. It would have to be going at least 60 knots to clear the scanner's range that fast. Equipment malfunction? Zoe suggested. The rest of the readings are still coming through fine, I said, pointing to the smaller blips on the screen. Everything else is still registering. So, what are we saying? Brody asked, looking around at all of us. That this thing can just vanish? No one had an answer for that. We stood in silence, staring at the scanner as if expecting the object to reappear at any moment. But it didn't. Keep monitoring, Zoe finally said. I want round-the-clock surveillance of that area. If it comes back, I want to know immediately. The crowd slowly dispersed, everyone talking in hushed, excited voices. Theories were already forming, some reasonable, others wild speculation. I heard someone mention stealth technology, another person suggesting some kind of biological cloaking ability. I stayed at my post, continuing to scan the waters. Wendy remained with me, her tablet filled with notes and questions. You think Michiel was right, she said. It wasn't a question. I think he saw something, I replied carefully. Something big. Whether it's what we just detected, I don't know. But he wasn't hallucinating. This changes everything, Wendy said quietly. If there's a species this large in these waters that can somehow evade detection, we need to completely rethink our understanding of this planet's ecosystem. I nodded, still watching the empty scanner screen. And our safety protocols. Hours passed with no further sign of the creature. Eventually, Zoe ordered a rotation schedule for monitoring. I was to be relieved at 0400 hours, giving me just enough time to catch a few hours of sleep before morning briefing. As I headed back to my quarters, exhausted but too wired to feel it, I passed by the observation deck. A lone figure stood at the railing, staring out into the dark water. It took me a moment to recognize Michiel. I hesitated, then approached him. Hey, thought you were resting. He didn't look at me, just kept staring into the water. I can't sleep, not when it's out there. You know about the scanner reading? He nodded slowly. Caitlin told me. She thought it would help. Validate my experience. A bitter smile crossed his face, as if I needed validation. I moved to stand beside him at the railing. The ocean stretched out before us, black and impenetrable in the night. We saw something big down there, then it vanished. It didn't vanish, Mikkel said softly. It's still there, watching, waiting. Something in his voice made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Waiting for what? For us to understand. His knuckles were white where he gripped the railing. I can feel it, Matt. Even now. It's calling to me. I studied his profile in the dim light. His eyes had that same haunted look I'd noticed earlier, but there was something else there now. A kind of intensity that hadn't been there before. Calling to you? I kept my voice neutral, not wanting to sound judgmental. What do you mean? I can't explain it. He finally turned to look at me. It's like a pull, an overwhelming need to go back into the water, to see it again. Michiel, you need rest. Come on, let's get you back to your quarters. He shook his head. You don't understand. None of you do. It's not just some animal down there, Matt. It's more. More how? Intelligent. Aware. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. It knew I was there. It recognized me as something different, something to study. We think we're the observers here, but we're wrong. We're the ones being observed. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as stress and fatigue, but after what I'd seen on the scanner, I couldn't just write it off. Let's talk about this in the morning, I suggested, after we've both had some sleep. Michiel didn't seem to hear me. He was staring into the water again, that strange intensity back in his eyes. I need to see it again. And you will. We'll set up proper equipment, do it safely. With the team. No. He shook his head. That's not what it wants. Now I was getting seriously concerned. What wants? Michelle, you're not making sense. I can't explain it to you. He finally turned away from the railing. You'll understand when it happens to you too. When what happens to me? But he just gave me that same bitter smile and walked past me toward the door. Get some rest, Matt. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. I stood there for a long moment after he'd gone, looking out at the dark water. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the night air. Something was happening to Michel, something beyond simple stress or fatigue. That strange fixation in his eyes, the way he talked about being called to the water. I thought about going to Caitlin or Zoe, telling them about our conversation. But what would I say? That Michel was acting strange? They already knew that he felt some kind of connection to whatever was in the water. They'd probably chalk it up to his obsession with proving he wasn't hallucinating. Still, as I finally headed to my quarters, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed. Not just in our understanding of this planet's ecosystem, but in Michael himself. He seemed like a different person now, focused on something none of the rest of us could see or feel. I'd known Michael for years. We'd worked together on 3 different research missions. He was always methodical, rational, grounded in scientific method. The man I'd just spoken to on the deck seemed like someone else entirely. Tomorrow, I'd talk to Caitlin. Michael needed help more than just a night of observation. Whatever was happening to him went deeper than I'd initially thought. And as I finally lay down in my bunk, exhausted but wide awake, I couldn't help wondering if it had something to do with that massive shape we'd detected in the water. The shape that had somehow vanished without a trace. I woke up groggy, still thinking about Mikkel. The conversation on the deck kept playing in my head. The weird intensity in his eyes. How different he seemed from the methodical scientist I'd worked with these past months. My alarm hadn't gone off yet, but I knew I wouldn't get back to sleep. I swung my legs over the side of the bunk, feeling the cool metal floor beneath my feet. The station's constant hum of machinery filled the silence. I checked the time, 5:43. Early, but not unreasonably so. I figured I'd grab coffee, then check the sonar readings before the morning briefing. Maybe we'd picked up something overnight. Maybe there'd be some explanation for what we'd seen and what had disappeared. The corridor was quiet as I made my way to the common area. A few night shift people were still up, looking tired but focused. I nodded to Grace, who was hunched over water sample data at one of the tables. "You're up early," she said without looking up. "Couldn't sleep." "Join the club." She gestured to her empty coffee mug. "This is number 4. I poured myself a cup and doctored it with the powdered creamer we all complained about, but used anyway. "Anything new with the samples?" She shook her head. "Nothing that explains a 50-meter creature that can vanish into thin air. Or water, I guess." "Yeah." I took a sip. "I'm gonna check the sonar readings." "Zoe's got Brody and Holly monitoring in shifts. They haven't reported anything." I nodded, but I still wanted to see for myself. I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, and headed toward the monitoring station where we'd set up the sonar last night. Brody was there, looking half asleep. He straightened up when he saw me. "Morning," he said, stifling a yawn. "Nothing to report, not a blip all night." I looked at the screen. Normal readings, normal patterns, nothing unusual. "Where's the portable unit?" I asked, noticing the equipment table was empty. Brody frowned. "Isn't it where you left it?" "I didn't move it." I glanced around the station. Last I saw, it was right there on the table. "Well, Holly didn't mention anything about it when she handed off to me 3 hours ago. Something didn't feel right. I'm gonna check with Zoe." I found her in the command center, reviewing overnight data logs. She looked up when I walked in. "Matt, you're up early. The portable sonar unit is missing." She frowned. Missing how? It's not where we left it last night. Brody says it wasn't there when he started his shift. Who would... She trailed off, and I could see her connecting the same dots I was. Michiel, we said in unison. I'll check his quarters, I said. I moved quickly through the station, that uneasy feeling growing with each step. When I reached Michael's door, I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Michael, you in there? Nothing. I tried the handle. It wasn't locked. His quarters were small, like all of ours, just enough space for a bunk, a desk, and storage for personal items. The bunk was empty, the sheets rumpled but cold. No sign of Michael. No sign of the sonar unit either. But there was something on his desk, a handwritten note. We hardly ever used actual paper on the station. Everything was digital. But there it was, a torn piece from his research journal. I picked it up and read, "It's calling to me. I need to see it again. Need to understand what it wants. The sonar will help me find it. Don't worry about me. This is important. M." Shit, I muttered, reading it again. I grabbed the note and ran back to the command center. Zoe was already on the comms. "Attention all personnel. This is Station Lead Navarro. We have a situation. Dr. Michael George is unaccounted for, along with portable sonar equipment. All available staff report to the command center immediately for search assignments." She looked up when I entered. "Find anything?" I handed her the note. "He's gone looking for it." She read it quickly, her expression darkening. "How long has he been gone?" No way to know. His bunk was cold. The command center filled up quickly as the rest of the team arrived. Zoe held up her hand for silence. "Michiel George has left his quarters sometime during the night shift. He's taken the portable sonar equipment and left this note." She held it up but didn't read it aloud. "We need to find him immediately. I'm assigning search teams to cover every section of the station." She pulled up the station schematic on the main display. "Matt, take the research labs. Wendy, check all observation decks. Finn, the maintenance levels. Braden, the equipment bays. Grace and Doris, the living quarters. Holly, the medical facilities. I want constant communication. If you find him, report immediately, but do not approach him alone. He may be in an unstable state." We all nodded. The gravity of the situation was clear on everyone's faces. "He's been acting strangely since his dive," Wendy said. "What if he's..." She didn't finish the thought. "That's why we find him," Zoe said firmly. "Now." We split up. I headed straight for the research labs, moving quickly through each one. The marine biology lab was empty, everything in its place. No sign that Michiel had been there recently. Same with the genetics lab and the environmental monitoring lab. I checked everywhere, under tables, inside storage cabinets, even the specimen freezers. Nothing. "Research lab's clear," I reported into my comm. "Moving to the underwater observation dome." "Copy that," Zoe replied. "No sign of him in any other areas yet." The underwater observation dome was a hemispheric structure beneath the main platform, with reinforced glass panels that offered a 180-degree view of the ocean below. It was one of the most isolated spots on the station, and one of Michael's favorite places. The lights were off when I entered. I switched them on, calling out his name. The dome was empty. I walked to the viewing panel and looked out into the dark water. "What did you see out there, Michael? What's gotten into you?" My comm crackled. "Matt?" It was Finn. "I think I've got something. Movement near the diving bay." My heart jumped. "On my way." I ran through the corridors, passing others from the search team. We all knew what the diving bay meant. Access to the water. Access to whatever Michael thought was calling to him. I reached the diving bay just behind Braden. Finn was already there, pointing toward the external platform, the launch point for submersibles and divers. And there was Michael, standing at the edge, his back to us. The portable sonar unit was strapped to his body with what looked like equipment belts. A coil of rope was secured around his waist, the other end tied to a mooring cleat. "Michael!" I called out, moving toward the hatch that led to the external platform. He turned slightly, just enough to see his profile. He was smiling. "Stay back, Matt," he said, his voice eerily calm. "I have to do this." "Do what?" "Mitchell, come inside. We can talk about this. It's waiting for me. I can feel it." He tapped the sonar screen. "It's down there, right below us, waiting." I moved closer to the hatch, trying to keep my voice steady. "Then let's prepare a proper dive, with safety protocols, with backup." Finn had reached the comms panel. "Zoe, we've found him. Diving bay external platform. He's got the sonar strapped to him and looks ready to enter the water." Michael laughed softly. "You still don't understand. None of you do. It's not just some creature. It's more. It knows we're here. It's been studying us." "How do you know that?" I asked, trying to keep him talking while I inched closer to the hatch. "I've felt it, in my head, since that first dive." He looked down at the water. "It wants to communicate." Braden moved up beside me. "We should rush him," he whispered, "before he jumps." I shook my head slightly. "Might make him panic. Let me try talking him down." Zoe's voice came through the comms. "Caitlin is on her way. Keep him engaged." "Michiel," I said, louder this time, "that equipment is heavy. If you go in the water with it strapped to you like that, you'll sink. That's the point." He adjusted something on the sonar unit. "I need to go deep, where it is." "You'll drown," Braden said bluntly. Michael shook his head. "I have the rope, and it won't let me drown. It wants me alive." I reached for the hatch release. "I'm coming out there, Michiel, just to talk." "There's no time for talking." His voice rose suddenly, intense and desperate. "It's moving away. I can't let it go again." Before I could react, he turned fully toward the water. I yanked the hatch open, but I was too late. Michael stepped off the platform and dropped straight down into the dark water. "No!" I shouted, rushing onto the platform with Braden right behind me. The rope went taut almost immediately, whipping through the mooring cleat with a sharp hiss. Braden lunged for it, grabbing it with his gloved hands, trying to slow Michael's descent. "He's too heavy," Braden grunted, the rope burning through his gloves. I grabbed the rope too, but it was useless. The combined weight of Michael and the sonar equipment was pulling him down faster than we could hold him. "Emergency protocols," Zoe's voice came through the comms. "Braden, Grace, activate the retrieval system. Matt, monitor the rope tension." Grace appeared beside us, moving with practiced efficiency toward the emergency retrieval winch. Braden joined her, both of them working to connect the rope to the motorized system. I kept my eyes on the rope, watching it play out. The marker bands showed how much line had gone out. 20 meters, 30, 40. "How much rope did he take?" Grace asked, her hands flying over the winch controls. "Standard coil is 100 meters, I said, "but that won't be enough if he's going after what we saw last night." The winch was ready now, taking the strain off our hands. The motor hummed as it managed the tension, preventing the rope from running out too quickly but not yet retrieving it. "Vital signs?" Zoe asked from behind us. She'd arrived with Caitlin and most of the others. Caitlin had a tablet in her hand, linked to the biomonitors all research staff wore. "Elevated heart rate, respiration." She paused. "He's still breathing. He must have some kind of rebreather." "The emergency dive kit is missing," Finn reported from inside. "Oxygen tank, mask, the works." "So this was planned," Zoe said grimly. "Not just an impulsive act." I watched the rope markers continue to slide past. 70 meters, 80, 90. "He's almost at the end of the line," I warned. "Start retrieval," Zoe ordered. "Slow and steady." Grace activated the winch's retrieval mode. The motor strained as it began to pull against Michael's weight and the water resistance. For several long minutes, we all stood in tense silence, watching the rope slowly begin to return. The marker bands reappeared, 90, 85, 80. Then I felt it, a change in the tension. The rope suddenly went slack. "Something's wrong," I said. Before anyone could respond, the rope jerked violently, nearly yanking itself free from the winch. Grace scrambled to adjust the settings as the rope whipped back and forth. "What's happening?" Zoe demanded. "I don't know." I grabbed the railing, leaning out to look down at the water. I couldn't see anything beneath the dark surface. The rope continued its violent movement, jerking with such force that the entire platform vibrated. The winch motor whined in protest. "Is it Michael?" Caitlin asked, her voice tight with concern. "Could he be struggling?" Braden shook his head. "Not like this. These are massive force variations." My mind flashed to the sonar image from last night, the massive cylindrical shape moving deliberately through the water. Had Michael found it? Had it found him? The violent jerking continued for nearly a minute, the longest minute of my life. Then, suddenly, it stopped. The rope went completely slack. We all stared at each other, the same fear reflected in everyone's eyes. "Continue retrieval," Zoe said quietly. "Maximum speed." Grace adjusted the winch to its fastest setting. The motor whirred loudly as it began pulling the rope in rapidly. I moved to help, grabbing the rope as it came in, pulling hand over hand alongside the mechanical winch. Braden joined me, then Finn. All of us working together, dreading what we might find. The rope came in wet and heavy. 70 meters, 60, 50. My hands were raw, my shoulders burning with effort, but I couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. 40 meters, 30, 20. "I see something," Finn said, pointing at the water. We all leaned forward, peering into the darkness below. A shape was emerging from the depths, rising with each pull of the rope. But as it came closer to the surface, I realized something was wrong. The shape was too small, too irregular. 10 meters. 5. The end of the rope broke the surface. Attached to it was the portable sonar unit. Its screen shattered, the casing dented and scraped. The emergency rebreather mask was still connected to its strap, torn and twisted. But there was no Michael. I stood there frozen, watching the rope. We'd all gone quiet. The only sound was the gentle lap of water against the platform and someone's breathing. Maybe mine, maybe Braden's. The rope moved again, jerking upward. "There," Finn said. "Something's coming." The three of us leaned over the edge, staring down at the dark water. I could make out a shape beneath the surface now, getting clearer as it rose. At first I thought, hoped, it was Michael swimming up. But as it got closer, I knew it wasn't him. The shape was wrong. When it finally broke through, I felt my stomach drop. It was Michael, but not how I expected. His body floated face up, arms spread slightly, the portable sonar unit still strapped to his chest. His dive suit was intact. Everything looked normal except for his face. Where his eyes should have been were just empty sockets, clean, precise hollows where his eyes used to be. "Jesus Christ," Braden whispered. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. My brain kept trying to make sense of what I was seeing, but nothing connected. Mikhail's face was relaxed, almost peaceful, lips slightly parted, no signs of pain or struggle, just those empty eye sockets staring up at the sky he couldn't see. Finn recovered first. He grabbed the body by the shoulders of the dive suit and, with Braden's help, pulled Mikhail onto the platform. Water pooled beneath him, spreading across the metal grating. "I'll get Zoe," Finn said, his voice unsteady. He turned and ran. I just stood there, staring. The sonar unit was still attached to Mikhail's chest, screen cracked, casing dented. But it was the contrast that kept me frozen, the brutal precision of those empty eye sockets against the calm expression on his face. We should cover him," Braden said. I nodded, but neither of us moved. I couldn't look away from Michael's face. The wounds were so clean they almost looked surgical. No ragged edges, no bruising, just perfectly empty sockets where his eyes should be. The intercom crackled. Medical emergency team to the diving bay. Repeat, medical emergency team to the diving bay. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, getting louder. Zoe arrived first, with Caitlin right behind her. They both stopped short when they saw Michael. "Oh, God," Zoe said, her hand going to her mouth. Caitlin moved forward, professional instinct taking over. She knelt beside Michael's body and checked for a pulse, though we all knew it was pointless. She looked up at us, her face pale. "What happened?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. He was just like this when we pulled him up. More people were arriving now. I heard gasps, someone retching in the corner. Zoe turned to them. "Everyone back. Give us space." Her voice was steady, authoritative. "Doris, get the medical bay ready. Grace, bring a stretcher." They moved quickly, glad to have something to do. Caitlin was examining Michael's face now, her hands steady despite everything. She didn't touch the eye sockets, just looked at them closely. "These wounds are precise," she said quietly. "Almost deliberate." "Could it be some kind of animal?" Zoe asked. Caitlin shook her head. "I've never seen any predator that removes eyes with this level of precision. And there are no other wounds, no defensive marks on his hands or arms." I found my voice again. "He doesn't look like he fought back." "No," Caitlin agreed. "He doesn't." The stretcher arrived, and they carefully lifted Michael onto it. The movement caused water to drain from his suit, creating small rivulets that ran across the platform. I watched them carry him away, his face still eerily peaceful despite those hollow sockets where his eyes should be. Zoe turned to me and Braden. "I need to know exactly what happened." I told her everything, finding the note in Michel's quarters, the search, arriving at the diving bay just as he jumped in, how the rope had gone slack, then tightened again. "He was only down there for maybe 20 minutes, I finished. Not long enough to get very deep." Zoe nodded, processing. "And neither of you saw anything in the water? Any movement? Any shadows?" We both shook our heads. "All right. Go get cleaned up and meet me in the conference room in 30 minutes. We need to talk to everyone at once." She walked away, already speaking into her comm unit. Braden looked at me, his face ashen. "What the hell could do that?" he asked. I shook my head. "I don't know." We stood there a moment longer, water still pooling at our feet, before heading to our quarters. I stripped off my wet clothes and stood under the shower, turning the water as hot as I could stand. It didn't help. I kept seeing Michel's face, those empty sockets, that peaceful expression. None of it made sense. When I got to the conference room, almost everyone was already there. The mood was heavy, faces pale and drawn. No one was talking much. I took a seat next to Wendy, who gave me a quick glance but didn't say anything. Her hands were trembling slightly. Zoe walked in exactly on time, as always. Caitlin followed her, looking composed but exhausted. They stood at the front of the room. "I know you've all heard by now," Zoe began. "Michael George is dead. His body was recovered from the ocean approximately 1 hour ago." She paused, letting that sink in. "The circumstances of his death are unusual. Dr. Barr has conducted a preliminary examination." Caitlin stepped forward. "Michael's body shows no signs of trauma beyond the removal of his eyes." She said it clinically, but I saw her swallow hard. "There are no defensive wounds, no signs of struggle. The removal appears to have been done with extreme precision." "Could it be some kind of fish?" Holly asked, her voice small. "Something with specialized feeding behavior?" "I've studied every cataloged species on this planet," Caitlin replied. "Nothing matches this pattern, and the precision suggests something more deliberate than predation." The room went quiet as everyone processed that. "What about the creature Michael saw?" I asked. "The one we tracked on sonar." "We have no evidence linking the two events," Zoe said carefully. "Come on," I said. Michael sees something in the water. Then we detect a massive object circling the platform. Then Michael goes back in the water and ends up dead with his eyes surgically removed. You don't think those are connected? Several people nodded in agreement. I'm not dismissing the possibility, Zoe replied, but we need to focus on facts, not speculation. The fact is, something killed Michael, Brody said. Something we don't understand, and we're sitting in the middle of an ocean full of whatever did this. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Which brings me to my next point, Zoe continued. I've contacted Mission Control. They've authorized an emergency evacuation. The room erupted in relieved sighs and quiet exclamations. The transport ship will arrive in approximately 48 hours. Until then, all water activities are suspended. No one goes outside the platform perimeter without direct authorization from me. She looked around the room, making eye contact with each of us. We have 2 days to secure our research and prepare for departure. Dr. Barr will be available for anyone who needs to talk. I expect all of you to follow protocols and help each other during this difficult time. Zoe dismissed us, and people began to file out, talking in hushed voices. I stayed in my seat, still trying to make sense of everything. Wendy remained beside me. You okay? She asked quietly. Not really, I admitted. I keep seeing his face. She nodded. Me too. And I wasn't even there. We sat in silence for a moment. What do you think did it? She finally asked. I don't know, but I think it's the same thing he saw on his dive. The same thing we tracked on sonar. It doesn't make sense though. Why would it take his eyes and nothing else? And why didn't he fight back? I shook my head. That's what keeps bothering me. He looked peaceful, like he wasn't scared at all. Caitlin approached us, overhearing the last part of our conversation. That's been troubling me as well, she said, taking a seat across from us. She looked tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from dealing with trauma. Have you ever seen anything like this before? I asked her. She shook her head. Never. The precision of the wounds suggests something almost surgical. And you're right about his expression. There are no signs of fear response in his facial muscles. Could he have been unconscious? Wendy asked. Possibly. But there are no signs of head trauma or any other injuries that would explain unconsciousness. I thought about Mikhail's note. He wrote that he felt called, that he needed to see it again. Caitlin nodded slowly. His behavior in the days before his death was concerning. Obsessive focus, paranoia, insomnia, but also a strange kind of wonder, like he'd discovered something profound. You think whatever it was somehow lured him? Wendy asked. I don't know, Caitlin admitted. But I've been studying the psychological profiles of everyone on this mission for months. Michael was rational, methodical, not prone to impulsive behavior. Something changed him. We fell silent, each lost in our own thoughts. Eventually, Caitlin stood up. I should check on the others. Some of them are taking this very hard. After she left, Wendy and I sat there a while longer. Finally, she stood up. We should get some rest, she said. Tomorrow's going to be busy if we're evacuating. I nodded, but didn't move. I'll be there in a bit. She hesitated, then squeezed my shoulder before leaving. Alone in the conference room, I pulled up the sonar readings from the night we detected the massive object. I scrolled through the data, looking for anything we might have missed. The creature, if that's what it was, had appeared suddenly, circled the platform, then vanished just as abruptly, almost like it was studying us. I thought about what Michael had said that night on the observation deck, that the creature wasn't just an animal, that it was intelligent, aware, that we weren't the ones doing the studying. A chill ran through me as another thought surfaced. What if Mikkel was right? The next morning, Zoe called another meeting to discuss evacuation procedures. The room felt different. Tension had been replaced with a grim determination to get off this planet as quickly as possible. People moved with purpose, focused on the tasks at hand rather than what had happened to Michiel. "We have approximately 36 hours until the transport arrives," Zoe began. "Each team will secure their own research materials and equipment according to emergency protocols. Essential data should be backed up to the central server and portable drives." She assigned each team specific responsibilities and time frames. My team was tasked with securing the oceanographic equipment and compiling all our data on wave patterns and currents. "What about Michiel's research?" Finn asked. A heavy silence fell over the room. "I'll handle Dr. George's materials personally," Zoe replied. "His family will want his findings." No one mentioned what we were all thinking, that Michael's research might contain clues about what killed him. After the meeting, I joined Wendy and Grace to begin cataloging our data. We worked mostly in silence, the routine tasks providing a welcome distraction from darker thoughts. "Do you think they'll send another team?" Grace asked as we packed up sensor equipment. "Not for a while," Wendy replied. "Not until they figure out what happened." "If they ever do," I added. We continued working, the reality of our situation sinking in. Months of research cut short. A colleague, dead in circumstances none of us could explain. And all around us, an ocean that suddenly felt much more dangerous than before. By evening, most of the essential equipment had been secured. The platform felt different. Sections powered down, labs emptied of their most valuable contents. People moved in groups, no one wanting to be alone. I was helping Brody pack up some monitoring equipment when Zoe approached us. "Matt, I need you on." I was helping Brody pack up some monitoring equipment when Zoe approached us. "Matt, I need you on night watch," she said. 4-hour shift starting at midnight. I nodded. "Sure. Take portable sonar and keep an eye on the water. Report anything unusual immediately. And Matt," she paused, looking me directly in the eyes, "don't go near the edge alone." After she left, Brody gave me a sympathetic look. "Night shift, that's rough." "Better than being in the water," I said. We finished securing the equipment, and I headed to the mess hall. Most of the team was there, eating dinner in small groups. The conversation was subdued but steady. People talking about home, about what they'd do when they got back to Earth. Normal talk, like we were trying to remind ourselves there was a normal world waiting for us. I grabbed a tray of food and sat with Wendy and Finn. We ate in silence for a while. "Almost done with the climate models," Wendy said eventually. 6 months of work packed into portable drives. "Same with the biodiversity samples," Finn added, "though we're leaving most of the specimens behind." I pushed my food around my plate. "Doesn't seem right. All this work, and we're just leaving." "Better than the alternative," Finn said quietly. None of us had much appetite after that. I forced myself to eat, knowing I'd need the energy for night watch. When I finished, I headed back to my quarters to get some sleep before my shift. I set my alarm for 11:30 and lay down on my bunk, not expecting to actually sleep. But exhaustion took over, and I drifted off almost immediately. The alarm jolted me awake. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. Just that familiar disorientation of waking up somewhere that isn't quite home. Then it all came back. Michiel, the evacuation, night watch. I got up, splashed water on my face, and pulled on fresh clothes. The corridors were quiet as I made my way to the equipment bay to pick up the portable sonar. It was a newer model than the one Michael had taken, smaller, with better range. I checked the battery, made sure it was fully charged, and headed to the observation deck. Holly was finishing up her shift. She looked tired, her usually animated face drawn and pale. "Anything?" I asked. She shook her head. "Quiet all night, just normal fish movements." She handed me a thermos. "Brought you some coffee." "Thanks, get some rest." She nodded and left, leaving me alone on the deck. I set up the sonar, positioning it to scan as much of the surrounding water as possible. The screen showed the expected patterns, schools of smaller fish, occasional larger predators moving through. Nothing unusual. I sipped the coffee, and settled in for a long 4 hours. The platform hummed around me, the sound of machinery that had become so familiar over the months that I barely noticed it anymore. Beyond the railing, the ocean stretched out, dark and still. No moon tonight, just the distant stars reflecting on the water's surface. I tried not to think about Mitchell floating face up in that water, eyes gone, face peaceful. Tried not to wonder what his last moments had been like. Had he been afraid? Had he realized what was happening? Or had something happened to him that we couldn't understand? Something that made him accept whatever was done to him? The sonar beeped, pulling me from my thoughts. A larger reading, about 50 meters out. I adjusted the scanner, focusing on that area. Probably just one of the shark-like predators that hunted at night. The reading moved steadily, following what looked like a school of smaller fish. Normal predatory behavior. I relaxed slightly, taking another sip of coffee. The reading disappeared from the edge of the scan radius, and the screen returned to its usual patterns. A sound caught my attention, a soft splash, different from the normal water movements against the platform. I turned, scanning the dark surface, but saw nothing unusual. The sonar showed no large readings nearby. Just nerves, I muttered to myself. I did another sweep with the sonar, adjusting the depth range. Everything looked normal. Schools of fish, smaller predators, the complex underwater ecosystem we'd been studying for months. Another splash, this time to my left. I turned quickly, heart rate picking up. Still nothing visible on the surface. I checked the sonar again. Nothing unusual within range. My hand went to the comm unit on my belt. I should report this. But what would I say? That I heard splashes but can't see anything. That the sonar shows nothing unusual. They'd think I was jumping at shadows. Maybe I was. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. The ocean made sounds all the time, waves against the platform, fish breaking the surface, nothing to worry about. The sonar beeped again, another large reading, this time closer to the platform. I focused the scanner, tracking the object. It was moving in a straight line, not the zigzag pattern of a hunting predator. About 30 meters out, 20 meters deep, moving slowly but deliberately. My finger hovered over the comm unit. This was something to report, but before I could press the button, the reading vanished. I adjusted the settings, scanning deeper, wider, but found nothing. "Where did you go?" I whispered. The surface of the water remained calm, undisturbed. No splashes now, no movement except the gentle rise and fall of small waves against the platform. I kept scanning, rotating through different depth ranges. Nothing unusual appeared. Minutes stretched into an hour. The coffee went cold in the thermos. My eyes burned from staring at the sonar screen. Then I saw it, a massive reading at the edge of the scanner's range, larger than anything we'd cataloged in these waters. I adjusted the focus, trying to get better resolution. The object was cylindrical, just like what we'd seen before, and it was moving toward the platform. This time I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the comm unit. "Zoe, this is Matt. I've got something on sonar. Large object moving toward us." Static. Then her voice, alert despite the hour. "How large?" "Similar to what we tracked before. 50 meters, maybe bigger. It's about 200 meters out, moving slowly this way." "I'm coming up. Don't take your eyes off it." I returned to the scanner, watching the object's steady approach. 180 meters now. 170. Moving with purpose, not the random patterns of a mindless creature. A memory surfaced. Michael's words that night on the deck. "It's watching us, studying us." The object reached 150 meters and stopped, just hovering there, not moving closer, not retreating, like it was waiting for something. Footsteps behind me. Zoe arrived, with Caitlin right behind her. "Still there?" Zoe asked, moving to look at the scanner. I nodded. "Hasn't moved for the last couple minutes, just sitting at 150 meters." Zoe studied the reading. her face illuminated by the blue glow of the screen. Same profile as before. Looks like it. Cylindrical, massive. Caitlin leaned in, looking at the data. It's not behaving like any predator I've studied. Predators don't stop and wait like this. What do you think it's doing? I asked. I don't know, she admitted, but it seems deliberate. We watched the screen in silence. The object remained stationary, a large mass hovering in the water, 150 meters out, 30 meters down, just waiting. Should we wake the others? I asked. Zoe shook her head. Not yet. Let's see what it does. Minutes passed. The object didn't move. The three of us remained at the scanner, barely speaking, just watching. This isn't normal behavior, Caitlin said finally. Not for any marine life I've ever studied. You think it's what killed Michiel? I asked. She hesitated. I think it's possible. Zoe straightened up. We should... The sonar beeped, interrupting her. The object was moving again. Not toward us, but down, descending rapidly. It's diving, I said, adjusting the scanner to track it. 40 meters, 50, 60. We watched as the reading got fainter, the object descending beyond the effective range of our scanner. Soon it disappeared completely. Gone, I said. Just like before. Zoe frowned. I don't like this. It's too deliberate. Like it knows we're watching it, I said. Caitlin looked troubled. We should wake the others. I don't think anyone should be alone tonight. Zoe nodded. Agreed. Matt, keep scanning. I'll get everyone to the main hall. She and Caitlin left, and I turned back to the sonar. I adjusted it to scan deeper, but found nothing. Whatever the object was, it had moved beyond our ability to track it. I stood there, scanning methodically, sector by sector. The coffee was long gone. My eyes burned. Every small sound made me tense. The creak of the platform, the splash of water, the hum of equipment. The rest of my shift passed without further readings. When Doris came to relieve me at 4, I gave her a full report. Be careful, I told her, and call immediately if you see anything. She nodded, her face serious. Will do. I headed to the main hall where most of the team had gathered. Some were sleeping on makeshift beds. Others sat in small groups, talking quietly. No one wanted to be alone in their quarters. Wendy waved me over to where she was sitting with Grace and Finn. Heard you had some excitement, she said as I sat down. I told them what we'd seen, the massive object approaching, stopping, then diving beyond scanner range. It's watching us, Finn said, echoing what Michiel had told me. Grace shook her head. That's ridiculous. It's an animal, not some intelligent being. Then why does it behave the way it does? I asked. Why approach, stop, then leave? Why take Michiel's eyes and nothing else? No one had an answer for that. 24 more hours, Wendy said finally. Then we're out of here. I nodded, but couldn't shake the feeling that 24 hours was still too long. Whatever was out there in the water, it wasn't done with us yet. I could feel it, a certainty deep in my gut. It was watching, waiting, learning. I settled back against the wall, exhaustion finally catching up with me. All around, my colleagues dozed or talked quietly, drawing comfort from each other's presence. Outside, beyond the walls of our fragile human structure, the ocean waited, vast and dark, and filled with things we didn't understand. I closed my eyes but couldn't stop seeing Michiel's face, peaceful despite those empty sockets where his eyes should be. Whatever happened to him in those final moments, I hoped it had been quick. But something told me it hadn't been. Something told me he had been aware, had known exactly what was happening to him. And somehow, for reasons I couldn't comprehend, he had accepted it. I kept checking my watch. The evacuation ship was already 2 hours late, which didn't help the knot in my stomach that had been there since we found Michiel. 3 days of waiting, watching the water, and jumping at shadows had worn us all down to raw nerves. Any update? Wendy asked, dropping her duffel next to mine by the platform's edge. Her hair was pulled back tight, dark circles under her eyes. None of us had been sleeping much. Nothing yet. I squinted up at the hazy sky. They said atmospheric interference might delay communications. Could be the same thing slowing them down. She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't really listening. We were all just going through the motions of conversation at this point. What was there to say? We'd lost Michael. We were abandoning months of research, and something was out there in the water. The platform felt different now, smaller, more fragile. The constant hum of equipment that had faded into background noise during our months here now seemed like a desperate mechanical heartbeat keeping us alive. I'd spent the last 3 nights on watch, scanning the water, waiting for that massive shape to return. It did, twice. Both times it circled below us at exactly 150 meters, then disappeared. I hadn't told anyone about the second sighting. What was the point? We were leaving anyway. There. Braden's voice cut through the silence. He was pointing up, his finger tracing something I couldn't see yet. Then I caught it. A small bright spot against the greenish-gray sky, growing larger by the second. About damn time, Finn muttered beside me. I hadn't even noticed him walk up. We all stood watching as the evacuation ship descended through the cloud layer. It wasn't particularly impressive, a standard orbital shuttle, boxy and utilitarian, but right then, it looked like the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "All right, people," Zoe's voice came from behind us. She'd aged years in the past 3 days, her usual confidence replaced by a grim determination. "Final checklist. Everyone's research data secured?" We all nodded. That had been the priority after securing Michelle's body. Whatever happened, we weren't going to lose the work we'd done here. "Personal belongings packed and tagged?" Another round of nods. "Equipment shut down according to protocol?" "Just the environmental systems still running," Holly said. "We'll power those down once we're loaded." The shuttle was close enough now that I could make out the United Earth Sciences Division logo on its side. The landing lights blinked in sequence as it approached the platform's designated landing area. The wind from its thrusters whipped across us, and I had to steady myself against the railing. "I want everyone to remember," Zoe said, raising her voice over the growing roar of engines. "We stick to the facts in our reports. No speculation, no theories. Just what we observed and recorded." She didn't look at me when she said it, but I felt the weight of her words. I knew what she was really saying. Don't talk about the thing in the water. Don't mention how Michael changed after seeing it. Stick to the official line: equipment malfunction, psychological breakdown, tragic accident. The shuttle touched down with a heavy thunk that vibrated through the platform. For a moment, nobody moved. It was like we all needed that extra second to believe this was really happening, that we were actually leaving. The cargo door slid open, and 2 crew members in standard UESD flight suits stepped out. They looked so clean, so normal. It was jarring to see new faces after months with just our team. "Research Station Gliesa 7, one called out. A woman with short gray hair and captain's stripes on her shoulder. Zoe stepped forward. "Expedition Leader Zoe Navarro. Captain Ellis, we're your ride home." She glanced around at our faces, at our packed gear. "Looks like you're ready to go. We need to move quickly. There's another storm system moving in that could delay departure." I grabbed my duffel and the hard case containing my research data. 6 months of work condensed into one reinforced box. It didn't seem like enough somehow. "How long is the trip back?" Grace asked as we formed a line to board. 17 days in cryo, Captain Ellis answered. "You'll be back on Earth before you know it." 17 days. The trip out had taken 23. They must have upgraded the drive systems since we left. Technology marches on, even when you're stuck on a platform in the middle of an alien ocean. I watched as the crew loaded Michael's body. They'd placed him in a sealed container, following protocol for deceased personnel. His research data was in a separate case, marked with his name and ID number. I wondered if anyone would ever look at it, if anyone would care about what he'd been studying before he died. Wendy nudged my arm. "You okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired." She didn't press. We were all tired, all ready to put this place behind us. As the others filed onto the shuttle, I found myself hanging back. I kept looking at the water surrounding our platform. Calm today, almost peaceful. Hard to believe something massive lurked beneath that surface. Hard to believe what had happened to Michael. "Matt." Zoe was standing at the bottom of the shuttle ramp. "We need to go." "I know, I gestured vaguely at the monitoring station. "Should I do one last scan?" She sighed. "We're leaving in 10 minutes. The equipment's already been powered down." I could quick boot the portable unit. "Matt." Her voice was firm. "It's over. We're going home." I nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were running away, that we were leaving something unfinished. Michael had died trying to understand what was out there, and we were just leaving. 5 minutes, Captain Ellis called from inside the shuttle. I took a last look around the platform that had been home for half a year, the monitoring stations where I'd spent countless hours, the railing where Mikhail and I had talked that night before he disappeared, the diving bay where we'd pulled his body from the water. I shivered despite the humidity. Then I turned and walked up the ramp into the shuttle. Inside was cramped but organized. 2 rows of seats for takeoff, then we'd transfer to cryopods for the journey home. The rest of the team was already strapped in, their faces a mix of relief and exhaustion. I found an empty seat next to Braden and stowed my bags in the compartment overhead. "Cutting it close," he muttered as I buckled in. "Wanted to make sure we didn't forget anything." He gave me a look that said he knew exactly what I'd been doing. "It's not your job to keep watching, Matt. We're done here." I didn't argue. What was the point? In a few minutes, we'd be breaking atmosphere, leaving this watery world behind. Whatever was out there would become someone else's problem if anyone ever came back to study this place. The shuttle door sealed with a hiss of pressurization. Captain Ellis and her co-pilot went through their pre-flight checks, their voices a calm back and forth of technical jargon. It was soothing in its normality. "Prepare for takeoff," Ellis announced. "Estimated time to orbit, 12 minutes. Cryo prep will begin once we dock with the transport vessel." The engines rumbled beneath us, vibrating through the metal floor. I gripped the armrests, suddenly anxious. Not about the flight. I'd done plenty of space travel before. No, this was something else. A nagging feeling that we were missing something important, that we were leaving before we had the whole story. "You look like you're heading to an execution, not going home," Wendy said from across the aisle. I tried to smile, just thinking about all the data analysis waiting for us when we get back. She didn't believe me. I could tell by the way her eyebrows lifted slightly, but she didn't push it. The shuttle lifted off with a surge of acceleration that pressed us into our seats. Through the small viewport next to Braden, I caught a glimpse of our research platform growing smaller below us. From above, it looked so insignificant, a tiny, human-made island in an endless sea. As we climbed higher, I could see more of the ocean stretching to the horizon in every direction. So much unexplored territory. So many unanswered questions. And then I saw it. A shadow in the water. Massive. Far larger than what we'd detected on the sonar. It moved beneath the surface with deliberate purpose, circling the area where our platform stood. I leaned closer to the viewport, my heart pounding. "Braden," I whispered. "Look." He glanced out, then at me. "What am I looking at?" "The water. There's something." But even as I pointed, the shadow disappeared, diving deeper or moving beyond our field of vision. "I don't see anything," Braden said after a moment. It was there, bigger than before. My voice sounded desperate, even to my own ears. Braden put a hand on my shoulder. Matt, we're all stressed. We're all seeing things that might not be there. I wanted to argue, to make him understand what I'd seen, but the shuttle was already breaking through the upper atmosphere, the blue-green of the ocean giving way to the darkness of space. Whatever had been down there was now far below us, out of sight. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes. Maybe Braden was right. Maybe I was seeing things. Stress and lack of sleep could do that to a person. But I knew what I'd seen, just like I knew what we'd detected on the sonar those nights after Michael died. Something intelligent, something watching us. Entering stable orbit, Captain Ellis announced. Docking with transport vessel in approximately 20 minutes. Please remain seated. The tension in the cabin eased a bit. Everyone seemed to exhale collectively, as if we'd all been holding our breath until we broke free of the planet's gravity. Conversation started up, quiet at first, then more animated as the reality set in. We were going home. I kept my eyes closed, trying to sort through my thoughts. The official report would be clinical, straightforward. Research station experiences equipment failures. Crew member suffers psychological break, resulting in accidental death. Decision made to evacuate remaining personnel. End of mission. Nothing about the massive shape in the water. Nothing about Michiel's missing eyes or his peaceful expression. Nothing about how he'd changed after his first encounter, how he'd been drawn back to the water. "You should try to sleep," Caitlin said, suddenly beside me. The mission psychologist had been quiet since we found Michael, spending most of her time writing reports and checking in with each of us individually. "I'm fine," I told her. "No, you're not. None of us are." She kept her voice low. "But we will be. Once we're home. Once we've had time to process what happened." "What did happen, Caitlin?" I asked. "Really?" She hesitated. "I don't know. I can give you the psychological explanation, stress, isolation, the pressure of working in an alien environment. I can tell you about how the human mind creates patterns where none exist, how it tries to make sense of tragedy by constructing narratives. But you don't believe that's all it was. I believe Michael experienced something that affected him deeply. I believe he was drawn back to it for reasons we might never understand." She paused. "And I believe there are things in this universe that don't fit neatly into our scientific categories." It was the most honest thing I'd heard anyone say since Michael died. "I saw something in the water as we took off," I admitted. "Bigger than what we tracked on sonar. Much bigger." Caitlin nodded slowly. "Are you going to put that in your report?" "Would anyone believe me if I did?" She gave me a sad smile. "Probably not. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen." The shuttle shuddered slightly as it made final adjustments for docking. Through the viewport, I could see the transport vessel, a bulky, long-range ship that would carry us back to Earth, home, safety, normalcy. "Preparing for docking," Captain Ellis announced. "Stand by." I looked around at my teammates. Some were talking quietly. Others sat in exhausted silence. We'd come to this planet to study its ocean, to catalog its life forms, to understand its ecosystem. Instead, something had studied us, and it had taken Michael. The shuttle docked with a metallic clunk, followed by the hiss of equalizing pressure. Captain Ellis unbuckled and stood. "Welcome to the UES Horizon. Cryo preparation will begin shortly. Please gather your personal items and proceed to the main deck in an orderly fashion." Everyone started moving, gathering bags, checking pockets, the mundane actions of travel creating a veneer of normality over everything that had happened. I grabbed my duffel and research case, then followed the others through the docking tunnel into the transport ship. The UES Horizon was bigger than our shuttle, but still utilitarian in design. No wasted space, no decorative elements, just corridors, compartments, and the cryo chamber where we'd spend the journey home in suspended animation. A medical officer met us, clipboard in hand. "I'll need to check each of you before cryo prep, standard procedure." We lined up for our examinations, basic stuff, blood pressure, temperature, pupil response, making sure we were fit for cryo sleep. I watched as each of my teammates was cleared and directed to a preparation area where they'd change into cryosuits. When my turn came, the medical officer was efficient but thorough. Any medical conditions I should know about? No. Sleep issues, nightmares. I hesitated. Some trouble sleeping the past few days. Nothing serious. He made a note. We'll adjust your cryo settings. You won't dream. That sounded perfect. 17 days without dreams, without seeing Michel's face, without feeling the presence of something vast and ancient watching from the deep. You're cleared, he said, making a final note. Prep area is through there. I nodded my thanks and headed to where the others were changing. The cryosuits were simple. White thermal material designed to regulate body temperature during suspended animation. I changed quickly, stowing my clothes in my duffel. All personnel report to cryo chamber, came an announcement over the ship's comm system. We filed in, a line of white-suited researchers ready to sleep away our journey home. The cryopods lined the walls of the chamber, each with a monitoring station beside it. The ship's medical team directed us one by one to our assigned pods. Mine was near the end of the row. I stepped up to it, looking at the padded interior that would hold me for the next 17 days. It seemed so small, so confined. Just lie back and relax, the tech said as I climbed in. The sedation is automatic. You'll fall asleep, then we initiate the cryo sequence. When you wake up, you'll be in Earth orbit. I nodded and lay back, trying to ignore the claustrophobic feeling as the pod's upper section lowered into place. Through the clear panel, I could see the tech working at the control station, entering parameters, checking readings. Ready? He asked, his voice coming through a small speaker near my head. Ready, I confirmed, though I wasn't sure if that was true. Sweet dreams, he said, pressing a button. A soft hiss came from somewhere near my feet. The sedative entering the pod's atmosphere. I took a deep breath, feeling it immediately, a heaviness in my limbs, a slowing of my thoughts. As consciousness began to fade, I found myself thinking of Gliese 581G's ocean, of the endless dark water, of the shape I'd seen from the shuttle, of Michael's face, peaceful despite the horror of his empty eye sockets. Whatever was out there, we'd left it behind. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't finished with us, that somehow, in some way, our brief encounter was just the beginning of something much larger. My last thought before the darkness took me completely was that I should have said something, should have made them look, should have made them see what was in the water. But it was too late now. We were leaving, and all I could do was carry the truth with me back to Earth, that in the dark waters of Gliese 501G, something waited, something watched, something knew we had been there, and maybe, someday, it would find us again.